Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Undisputed Studios podcast. My name is Isaiah, and I think I'm going to call this the first official episode of the podcast. Now, you may be thinking, hey, I've listened to the podcast before. You guys have done like 5 episodes. How is this the first one? Listen. Those episodes were like test runs, okay? They were scattered. We didn't know what we were doing. We recorded a few of those podcasts in a car, in a plane, in a house. You know, if you want to eat green eggs and ham. I don't know what I'm talking about right now. We did Jupiter's Legacy, but only reviewed the first episode and just had not come back. We reviewed, episode 1 of Falcon and Winter Solider. Never came back to it. That was a different time. Now, we're a couple of days. Within 48 hours, less than that, I think, from Loki coming out. Very excited. We're going to be talking about that on this podcast. We're going to be talking about Spider-Man. We're going to be talking about Eternals. We're going to be talking about Shang-Chi, Black Widow, Invincible. I may give, I'll give some brief thoughts right now about Jupiter's Legacy and Falcon and Winter Solider, since I didn't get to talk about it because I did not have the drive to do another podcast on those shows. Usually I would have my girlfriend with me and we'd be talking right now. We would be bantering. But she's not here. It's quiet. It's a glorious day. I'm just messing around. It is quiet, though. However, I'm here by myself. I won't be in a couple of days because the plan is to watch Loki Wednesday evenings, record the podcast right there, the both of us, after having seen it for the first time, and then I'll put the podcast out. It's very simple. It's a very simple system. And those will probably be going out like Wednesday nights, early Thursday mornings, around midnight, whatever it may be, as fast as I could get them out. So that's why I'm calling this the first actual episode of the podcast, because I am now making it a thing. This is going to be a priority. Okay, I'm actually going to be doing a podcast now and not some random stuff doing it for fun. We're actually doing this. All right, let's get started. Jupiter's Legacy. Canceled already after season 1. And let me tell you, I think I know why. Because I was bored during that show. I haven't even finished the first and only season yet. I think we got to, I think either episode 6 or 7. I can't remember. We only had a couple episodes left. And then I just kind of fell off on it. I didn't have motivation to keep watching it. Because if you go back and listen to the now unofficial episode of the podcast that we did for episode 1, I started to get into it, towards, I think I said like the second half of that episode, but the first half was just draining. Sad to say, the rest of the episodes, from what I've seen, are kind of just like that first half. They're just draining. They're so slow, and it's just boring. It's one of those shows where I'm just bored during it. And it's crazy. I did like when they would go back in time, when we saw the flashbacks. Those were the most intriguing parts of the show to me. But everything in the present, with the daughter and everything, I could not care less. Yeah, I know she's a drug addict. She's because she's driven there because of her relationship with her dad and all this stuff. I get it. All right, this story is not lost on me, but that does not mean that it's entertaining, or at least the way they portrayed it. I was just bored by it. I'm like, can we move on, please? Can we go back in the past? That's very rare to me. Can we go back to the flashbacks, please? That's the only part of the show that I care about. But even then, the flashbacks, they even felt like drawn out. It takes like 3 episodes for the dad to get to the house, right? And it's like, this is taking a while. So we have not finished the season yet, or the show now, because it's not getting a second season. And now my motivation is even decreased even more because, like I just mentioned, Netflix already canceled the show. So it's for sure we're not getting a season 2. So it's like, does it really matter if I jump back in and finish the show? Does it really matter? I don't know. Maybe at some point. But I just have no motivation right now. I'm like I think they had like 2-3 full episodes where the son, I literally cannot tell you any of their names. They want to be the boys so bad. It's very obvious right from the start of the show. They want to be, Netflix wanted to be like, we want our version of the boys, and the execution is just god awful. I don't know any of their names at all. And it's not like I wasn't trying to memorize their names. They just said them so, irregularly. They just didn't say names. I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I cannot have any connections with them. I barely know these people. It's very weird. It's like they're world building, whatever they're writing. I don't know what happened, but they did not establish anything pretty much. It's just, with like movies and TV shows, they say like some of the best ones happen where it's like you just drop in the middle of a story, right? You drop in the middle of the world. Like conflicts are already happening. People already have histories and stuff. And, it feels more natural because that's how life is. You don't always jump at the very start of something. But it feels like this show particular, took that to the extreme. They're like, we're not going to explain anything to you. Yeah, you'll see some stuff unfold, but you're not really going to have context to it. You're just going along for this ride with no knowledge of anything. And I think they went so far in that direction to the extreme to where it's just boring. I don't know what's going on. I have no connections to anything that's happening. So that's how I feel about the show. I went on a mini rant there. I'm probably going to do that loads of more times in just this episode. But yeah, I was just not into it. It sucks because the flashbacks were leading to something. It felt like they were, leading somewhere, but it didn't justify wasting my time on those episodes. I was like, I'm so bored. Speaking of being bored, let's move on to the next thing I want to talk about. Falcon and Winter Soldier. Falcon and Winter Soldier. All right, we did a podcast. Again, it's not an official episode. It's episode 0 point something. We did the reaction to episode 1 of the show. I haven't listened back, but I think I didn't really like it that much. Or it's not that I didn't like it. I was just, it didn't do anything for me. I wasn't like hype as I usually am. Every time I talk about this show with people, I explain it the exact same way. It's like a mountain. It starts off, in the valleys. It's very low. It's like, okay, I guess this isn't bad, but it's also not good. It's there. And then, once you get in the middle, that's where it skyrockets. That's where the mountain forms. You're like, yo, this is steep. We're going high up right now. And then when the show ends, it falls off a cliff. And you're like, okay, now we're back in the valleys. The valley, the shadow of death. I'm bored. That last episode, the finale, it was very weird because I'm going to talk about Invincible in a second because we didn't do any podcasts about that, but I absolutely love that show. Absolutely number one thing I've seen this year, Invincible. But it felt like Falcon and Winter Soldier, that last episode, if you put that with, I think, the last episode of Invincible, I know it's not really a fair comparison, but I'm going to do it anyway. I don't fight fair. I fight dirty. Falcon and Winter Soldier, that last episode ended with them on a mission. I didn't even really know why, because I think they were sent home, right? And then they're like, we're going to go on this mission. And then they're just fighting in the dark for 15, 20 minutes to start off that episode. And it's just like, oh, we gotta, there are these people in this helicopter that we need to save. Who are these people? Why is it important that these people survive? Who are these people? Why are they important? Why are you guys back in the field when you were taken off the field? Why is nobody questioning why Sam Wilson essentially stole government property? Because he has the shield now. And I know it's not actually the government's property, right? That's what, Elaine, that was a good surprise though. when Elaine showed up, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, when she showed up, I'm like, yo, that's pretty cool. When she showed up and she's like, yeah, it's kind of like a legal gray area. They don't really own it. But at least to the public, it's the government's property. And also the government isn't just going to freely acknowledge that they don't really own it. They're going to act like they own it. So I was confused why nobody, especially when Sam is sitting there, he's standing with all those, government officials in the street for 3 minutes giving his speech. Nobody's interrupting him and going, didn't you steal that shield? We gave that shit to John Walker. Why do you have it? You gave it up, remember? Why do you have this? Why are you in the field? We told you to get off. Why are you here? Nobody asked any of those questions. Sam and Bucky were just doing whatever the hell they want, and everybody's just like, okay, I guess. And it's what? And then also it's the what is her name, Carly or whatever, the girl running the Flag Smashers. Why was Sam? There was Sam's no, I'm not gonna fight her. No, we're not gonna take her in. She's just a kid. She kills more people. Oh, I'm not gonna fight her. She's just a kid. We can't take her in. I just need to talk to her. He talks to her. Nothing happens. Oh my God, I just need to talk to her. I gotta get through to her. She kills more people. Oh man, I just need to talk to her. And then, what's the big conclusion of that? He's standing in the street and he's like, oh, it's your fault she's like that. And it's I mean, sure, you could say that. However, are you, she's still not a good person, right? She should not be defended. It should be yeah, you guys suck, but also she sucks too. But it's he's oh no, Tic Tac, I'm on her side 100%. I just need to talk to her. She's just a kid. What? So that whole finale was just, I think it's a perfect conclusion to the show that it mostly was. It was kind of jumbled. It didn't really know what it wanted to be. You know what I mean? I was the Zemo parts, that's what made it the mountain. That's what made it steep. I'm these are the highs. Zemo's doing great. We're having some fun here. Not saying, oh, it's bad if it's not fun. But it just so happens that it was good when it was fun. So when Zemo was there for those couple episodes, that was fun. The John Walker stuff, I don't think they handled very well. You can go back, listen to it. Again, it's not an official episode, but go back to it. I was saying that because we only did the first episode. So, that first episode ends with John Walker just in the suit. We don't hear from him or anything. I said that I hope that he's a nice guy. Right, he's a nice guy who was given the shield, but then Sam needs to get the shield back. So now he has to, come to this conflict of, I need the shield back, but I gave it up. So now I need to take it away from this actually nice guy who could use the shield. He could be a good Captain America, but I still need to take it from him. That would have been interesting to see. And then I also said, I hope it doesn't turn into what it actually did end up being, which is, oh yeah, he gave up the shield and then they give it to somebody else and then that guy turns out to be a bad guy. So now Sam has to be oh no, I'm the only guy who needs to get this shield. So now he has to go and get the shield, right? And then somewhere along the line, he accepts that he needs to get the shield, right? And that's exactly what they did. And surprise, surprise, that was not very interesting. That was kind of boring because it was very predictable and it just wasn't engaging. It's okay, sure. So you have the shield because a bad guy had it. Okay, I guess. All right. If this is the case, why not just have War Machine go take the shield then? All right. If you don't want it, you already gave it up. You know what I mean? And yes, I know. You may be listening. You may be well, that's why they had the Isaiah Bradley character, because Sam has to confront that. And then that's where it accepts that, oh, he can actually now accept the shield because he needs to do this, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I get it. Again, I understand it. I don't think it was executed very well. I think it would be you could have still had the Isaiah Bradley stuff. You could have had, they're not like mutually exclusive. You could have had Sam go on this journey of learning about this terrible history with a almost black Captain America. And also had John Walker be a nice guy. So when at the conclusion, Sam still has to confront that of like, I need the shield, but also I need to take down this guy who, you know, who's doing a pretty good job with the shield. But it just turned into like this very, you know, predictable, you know, just, I guess, comic book move where it's, you know, just, I don't know, it's very like surface level stuff in a show where it's like it wants to tell you that it's like going for all these deeper levels, and on sometimes it does. You know, like that one scene where the police stop Sam. Well, not stop, but just like, you know, stop him. And Sam is just like, I didn't do anything. And then Bucky is like totally oblivious of what's going on. And then Sam's just like, this is just how things work in my world. That stuff works, but like that was like sprinkled in. That wasn't like the entire show. Like these main things, like the Flag Smashers. What was I just talking about? Sam getting the shield back, and John Walker and stuff. Like there's just hints of layers. There's not like actual layers to it. It's like, all right, the Flag Smashers, they're like, oh, the world was better when there were less of us, and now we were united back then, and we want to be united again. And it's like, okay, but then also outside of those scenes, everybody's saying, oh my God, these Flag Smashers, they're terrible people. They're terrorists. Oh my God, they're so bad. What do we see? Like one scene in like the first episode of like an attack that happens. That's like the only thing we see. And it's like, all right, I guess. But then they're also trying to be like, oh, you know, feel sympathy for. It's like they're like, oh, you know, people liked Thanos, they like Killmonger, stuff like this. So we want our villains to be sympathetic too. But then it's like, there's like a disconnect where they're not very sympathetic because they don't really talk about their motives very much. It's just, we want the world to get back to where it was. And it's like, we haven't personally seen a lot of the world during that time period, so we have like no frame of reference. So it's like we have no connection to what they want, you know. At least with like Thanos in his movie, he did it quick. He was like, we got it in like a minute, where he shows up on Titan and starts talking to Doctor Strange. He's like, yo, all right, so my planet, it was dope as shit one time, and then, you know, overpopulation, shit started to go south. And then, you know, I suggested this, and then, hey, boom, boom, they didn't listen, and now this planet is terrible now, and this is what I'm doing. And then that was so quick, but we're like, okay, we at least saw something, and we're like, okay, even though you're crazy, you shouldn't be doing this, we understand why you're doing this. We did not see this with the Flag Smashers. We're like, oh, the world was better then. How? We don't see it. The only things we've seen, I think, were the little bits in Endgame where it's like very depressing at the start. You know, we're like, oh man, you know, the stadiums are completely empty and stuff. And then we saw Monica in the hospital in WandaVision, and that was chaotic. And it's like, that's like pretty much the only things we've seen in that time period. And it's all like bad. It's not like we have, again, no frame of reference. They're like, oh, it was bareback then. We have not seen that. Maybe give us a flashback. You know, maybe you could hook up a deal with Netflix. You could take a flashback from Jupiter's Legacy, put it in this show, boom, and then boom, now we have context. That show did a ton of flashbacks. This one can't do a single flashback to be like, yo, you know what? With that flashback, they shined a light on a different aspect of the world during that time period. I understand why they want to go back. But I'm ranting now. I digress. Yeah, the show just, you know, for the most part, it was just there. Yeah, the Isaiah Bradley stuff was cool. The Zemo stuff was cool. I liked how they tied in Wakanda. That was cool. The Bucky stuff was like, he got the short end of the stick. I was excited to see what they were going to do with him. They only did like, what is it, a couple scenes like specifically just about him, and then everything else was just like playing into Sam's story. So that was underwhelming. I did like at the end, where the show ends and then they're like, oh, they changed the name where it's like Captain America and the Winter Soldier. I'm like, yo, that's pretty cool. That's cool. The finale wasn't great, but that's pretty cool. And then like right after, reports were coming out, the Captain America movie was coming out, and it's like, all right, this is cool. This is what that show was building towards. The Sharon Carter stuff is just, man, I think that's the perfect like personification of what this show is. It's like, there's like some teases to things, but it's like largely, at least for this show, in a vacuum, like just by itself, right? Very forgettable. It's just there. Okay, she's a power monger. What does that mean? I don't fucking care. Like, and then like, what was that scene at the very end where she's like, all right, she's giving her position back or something, right? And then she walks outside, and then she's like talking on the phone, but we have no indication. There wasn't even a hint as to who she's talking to. What are we supposed to get from that? Usually these scenes exist to get us excited for future projects, right? Those are why they exist. She's just talking on the phone. Am I supposed to be excited about that? Yeah, sure, she's talking to someone. Who? You won't even give me a hint? Like, at all. Like, what am I supposed to get excited about? She's on a phone? Okay, so this maybe evil or at least a gray area character is like talking to a partner, and now they have a plan. That's the big reveal. It was like, well, I could have fucking told you that. You're like, if you walked up to me before that scene happened and you're like, all right, that's the show. There's no post-credit scene. What do you think is happening with Sharon Carter? I would have been like, she probably is planning to do something at some point in the future. Yeah, and it's like, that's all that scene was. It was like, oh, we got a plan. Okay. I would hope so. You're the power broker, right? You're like, I would hope you know what to do next after whatever happened. I would hope everybody has a plan. It was just very weird. I don't know. The show was very weak. I think they really did get the short end of the stick there, where they had to come out after WandaVision. Because I think originally this was supposed to be the very first show that they were going to put out. So that it coming after WandaVision did them no favors at all, because WandaVision, that show hits. All right, that show slaps. But I'm done talking about the show. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about a great show. I'm only going to talk about it briefly. Invincible. What a phenomenal fucking series this is. Season 2, come on, bring it. I hope, hey, I know animation takes a while, right? But come on, give me it like January next year. Come on, please. This show is so great. I heard Greg Miller from Kinda Funny talk about it. I watched him watch the trailer for the show, and then he's like, you guys may think you know what the show is, and he's like, you do not. It goes very, very interesting places very quick. And I'm like, okay, I'm excited. I'm usually not one for animation. I haven't liked it like all my life. Even when I was a kid, I'm like, Cartoon Network, get the fuck out of here. Animation has never really done it for me. That includes this show, but the story is so good, I tend to let it slide. Although it would have been crazy if this was like a live action show. It's like if it was like almost a 1-to-1 and they were able to just transfer over to live action, that would be incredible. But it's still very good as animation. The gore in it is fucking crazy. It grosses me out sometimes. It's crazy. But yeah, that first episode, I'm not going to talk about this too much. You've already heard it. The show has been out for like a month and a half now. I'm not gonna say anything new. Incredible show. Sometimes it drags a little bit, like in overall episodes, like where not drags, where they're just biding their time to get to the finale. You know, they gotta add a little bit of fluff there, not too much, but just a little bit, which I can understand because maybe they have requirements, you know, timing requirements. But they do such a good job at making me care about every single storyline that was going on. A drastic difference from Falcon and Winter Soldier and Jupiter's Legacy. They made me care about every single one. All of them. You know, of course, you know, there's like some that I care more about than others. But like, I care about all of them, at least to some extent. So it's never switching to a different scene and then I roll my eyes. I'm like, oh my God, we have to do this again. Everything was great. Even like they had a couple episodes like what I was talking about where they're like biding their time. Like the man, I forget his name, but basically the rock guy. I'm sorry, I don't know his name. But the guy that turns into a rock, that episode where it's like, oh, I have a daughter. And then it's like, ooh, we need to take down this robot who happens to be Jeffrey Donovan of, you know, Burn Notice. I used to watch that shit when I was a kid. Like, I think like right after Monday Night Raw, I would watch Burn Notice. I'm like, yo, this show is pretty good. But yeah, that whole episode. And then at the end where it's like, oh man, this is all a plan just to get me on top of this empire. I'm like, all right, cool. Even that one, like, set up many things for the future. So everything had a purpose. It was crazy. This show is like nearly perfectly crafted. Perfectly crafted. Oh my God, it was great. Even though it's not a perfect show. Okay, Amber and I forget Mark's best friend's name, but both of those characters, yo, I'm going to need Omni-Man to come back down season 2, at the start of season 2, just kill his friends. I cannot stand them. Amber, she's always upset for something. And then it turns out, oh, I knew you were invincible this whole time and you were lying to me. And then she turns that into a thing to be upset about. It's like, okay, so you're smart enough to know this and shit, but you're not smart enough to grasp the simple fucking thing where he needs to protect his identity and he cannot really reveal it to people because that endangers them. Are you just too stupid to realize that he didn't want to endanger you? Like, it's like, what? So that was awful. And then, like, the best friend, it was just like, every time he showed up, he's like, I guess that's his thing where it's like, oh, I'm selfish. I'm only going to talk about me and shit. And it's like, I mean, I guess, but also it's like, why the fuck is Mark friends with this guy? You know what I mean? It's like, why? He's only talking about himself. And it's like, oh my God, you're invincible. I'm going to tell people you're invincible if you don't take me flying. And it's like, it would be a haha joke if he wasn't like that all the time before he even knew he was invincible. He's like that all the time. Yeah, so Amber and whatever his name is, I seriously cannot remember his name. I don't care for them at all. But I like the mom, she's cool, very sassy. You know, Omni-Man, fucking incredible. What an incredible character. I think you got J.K. Simmons voicing him too. What a perfect casting. Mark is cool. He seems a little bit too young, if that makes sense. Like, I think he's supposed to be like 17, right? Or 18, about to go to college, but he seems like the way he acts sometimes is kind of like a 15, 16-year-old. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know. He's a little bit too immature with like the way he talks about and deals with certain situations. It's almost like a child, basically, like a teenager would do it. And I guess I don't know, maybe 18 is still like a teenager, but do you know what I mean? It's like not like an adult. It's like, All right. But I'm sure, over the course of the series, he's going to mature and stuff like that. Also, what a great theme song. That is a great theme song. You know what's not great, though? Those, like the title cards for the show. They all of them are terrible. Oh, what are you going to do, man? Oh, I'm going to do this. How are you going to do that? Because I'm invincible. They were always terrible. They did not feel right. But since the show is so good, I do wonder if that's on purpose. I wonder if they made that terrible on purpose to be like, oh, we're being, cheesy and stuff like a comic to be, give it like make it seem different because the show is so insane. So they want to, make it, they want to contrast it with that like simple, like cheesy thing. I don't know. Could be on purpose. It could be, just they thought it was cool. I really can't see that happening though, because it's so bad. Hopefully season 2, those are a lot better. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Invincible. Can't wait for season 2 and 3. What an incredible show. Okay, next up. Next month, Black Widow. Very excited. We're getting back into the swing of things, people. Black Widow. Very excited. I think a new trailer came out recently. I haven't watched it. I don't think I'm going to watch it. I might watch it. I don't think I will, though. I don't need to watch it. I saw the trailers last year. I'm already hyped. You don't need to get me even more hype. I'm good. You don't need to, reveal more stuff. Or I got, what is it, Taskmaster? He's going to be in there. He's got his own shield and stuff. He's watching tapes. That's exciting. You got maybe the next Black Widow coming in after Natasha goes away somehow. I'm very intrigued on how they're going to end this movie. Because it's a prequel to events that we already see. But we already know going into this prequel that she dies at some point. So how are they going to end this movie? And what are the post-credit scenes going to be? Like is the movie going to end with like her on Vormir jumping off the cliff? I don't know how it's going to end. I'm very excited and intrigued. Shang-Chi. That trailer was pretty cool. Had some cool music. Looks nice. That's all I can say because it was a teaser, I think. I think they've only released one trailer so far. Not much happened, but it looks cool. I'm excited. I think that comes out in September. That's about all I have to say. I like the 10 rings. I like how I'm not familiar with the Shang-Chi character whatsoever. I think the Mandarin is his dad, or at the very least, like, he stole Shang-Chi when he was a kid or something and then acted like his dad. Either way, there's like this father-son relationship where now Shang-Chi is like, no, I don't want to be like you. I don't want to be evil. But then Mandarin's like, no, you got to be like me. You got to be like me. I got to pass down this legacy. I wonder if we could, maybe this is probably unlikely, but, let's have Justin Hammer make an appearance. Let's bring him back. How do you bring in Sam Rockwell into these movies and then only have him in one movie and then not bring him back? Come on, let's bring him back. Let's bring him back. You know what I mean? Or you could bring him back on that War Machine show. I forget, the name is escaping me right now, but a War Machine show should be coming out, I think, next year or like in 2 years or something. I don't know. The timeline, I don't think they even set a time on that show. I don't know. It's coming out at some point. You should, just put Justin Hammer in one of these shows or movies. Come on, bring him back. Yeah, we also had the Eternals trailer come out recently. That looked cool. It looks like a different movie. It doesn't look like the other movies, which is exciting. I'm like, okay, what is that? I have no idea what this movie is, what it's going to build towards. Apparently it's like a span thousands of years. We got hints of that in the trailer. Like, I'm hearing rumors that maybe there's like going to be a young Thanos, because I think they're from Titan too. And it's like, okay. And then they're going to have to answer the big question that is on everybody's mind. What is going to make them finally interfere in the events? Because in the trailer, I forget who said it, but they're like, oh, all this time we did not step in, but now we are. Like, what? Okay, so Loki invading Earth, that wasn't big enough. Ultron, picking up, what is it, an entire country? Was Sokovia a country, or it had to have been just a country, right? Sokovia picking up a country, because I don't think it was just a city. It was like a country, I think. Pick up a country, or no, it was probably just a city. I don't think you can't pick up an entire country and drop it. That'd probably be bad. All right, you pick up a city of Sokovia and drop it down, right? That's not big enough. Infinity War, that wasn't big enough, even though a couple of years earlier it was, the Avengers broke up. And then clearly in the trailer, at the end, they mention the Avengers, so they're aware of the Avengers. So I assume at some point they find out about the team splitting off after Civil War. So you have Civil War, and then 2 years later, you have Thanos come for the stones, and then the team's fractured, and then they didn't step in there. And then during the 5-year period, they didn't step in there. I'm assuming, we could see something in those 5-year gaps. But right now, I'm assuming they didn't step in there. They didn't come in during Endgame. Like, what is happening right now that's bigger than any of that? Right? I feel like that's a reasonable question to ask. I feel like the reasonable thing to think is that whatever's going to bring them to Earth again has to be bigger than anything we've seen, right? I think that's perfectly reasonable. They can't be like, oh man, this Mandarin guy is, man, that's some wild dude. We gotta finally come back to Earth and show people who's boss. You know what I mean? And then it's not gonna be Fantastic Four. It's not gonna be X-Men type stuff. At least I don't think. Even though that would be cool. Wouldn't it be amazing if the movie that's coming out this November, like, is just like all of a sudden a couple X-Men pop up on Earth, and they're just like, people hate them, and Eternals are just like, we got to step in. There's no Avengers around. We got to step in and stop these X-Men. That'd be crazy. Yeah. I'm very excited for this movie, though. The cast is absolutely stacked. And I think I should admit that the Guardians of the Galaxy, I do like them, but I see online and stuff when people talk about Guardians, they love the Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't think I've ever loved them. I really like them. I don't think I can say I love them. I hope the Eternals are my Guardians. You know what I mean? I hope that I love this group of characters, even though, what if like half of them get killed off in the movie? Because the only reason I say that is primarily because Angelina Jolie is in this movie. I still cannot believe how they got her in this movie. I know it's Disney and stuff, and she's worked with Disney and blah, blah, blah. I understand the logistics of how it's possible that she's in this movie, but at the same time, I do not understand how she's in this movie. Like, they got Angelina Jolie in a Marvel movie, and an ensemble one at that. She's like sharing the spotlight with, like, what is it, like 6 other people. Like, she's not the star of the movie. She's like sharing the spotlight. So I'm very curious, like, what if she's just like, all right, I'm going to do this one movie, I'm going to have some fun, and then I'm going to get killed off or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I hope that's not the case. I hope Angelina Jolie's in here for at least like a trilogy of this movie. And then maybe like, I don't know, 2 Avengers movies or something like that. That'd be really fun. But I don't, like, how do you, like, would she shine? Like, I don't know. She's a movie star. You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of people who are like in movies and stuff. They're movie actors and stuff. But like, she's like a movie star. She's like Brad Pitt. She's like Leonardo DiCaprio. It's like a movie star. Like, and she's gonna, I don't know, like, I don't know, man. Maybe she'll want to sign that contract to be like, oh, you're for the next, like, what is it, like 6 years, you're gonna be in like 5 movies. I guess she would want to do that. Maybe the pay is really good. I don't know. Again, like, I understand how it's possible, but I still don't get like how it's possible. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It blows my mind. I know I've seen a trailer. I still don't believe it. I won't believe it until I'm sitting there watching the movie where I'm like, yo, Angelina Jolie really is in this movie. We're about this life right now. This is happening. I know nothing about the Eternals either. So I don't know any of their names, but you got Richard Madden at the end of the trailer being like, I could lead the Avengers, which is very funny because we got fucking, what is it? Robb Stark, right? That was his name, Robb Stark. He was a terrible leader in Game of Thrones. And he's like, I could lead the Avengers. Dog, I don't know, man. You got a bad track record right now. I think you also got, what is it? You got Jon Snow in there too. I wonder what he's going to do. He's probably going to be a villain, isn't he? I think we also got Emilia Clarke going to be in that Secret Invasion show. They just signing up this whole Game of Thrones cast. Exciting stuff. Spider-Man No Way Home. Apparently the trailer is coming within the month. Those are the rumors that I'm hearing. I don't know what to expect from this movie because you go to one part of the internet and they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to do, maybe it's like a on the run type movie. You know, he's going to be running because his identity is found out and maybe he's going to encounter a couple of villains and stuff like that. Maybe Kraven the Hunter is going to be hunting him down. And then you go to the other side of the internet and they're like, oh my God, not only is it rumored, but it's fucking confirmed. We got Andrew Garfield. We got Tobey Maguire. They're in this movie. They're going to be in there with Alfred Molina. We're going to go back to the past Spider-Man movies. We're going to be hopping through the multiverse. That's where they're going to show up. Doctor Strange is going to be in this movie. It's going to be crazy. And also MJ might be Black Cat or some shit like that. And it's like, these rumors are pretty wild. So I don't really know what to believe. And then you got, you know, Andrew Garfield being asked about him being in the movie and then him denying it and then people being like, oh, well, of course he would deny it. And it's like, well, yeah, that is true, but also he could be telling the truth. Yeah. And then you got Jamie Foxx in there. I like Jamie Foxx, so apparently he's going to be in this movie and he's going to be Electro, but he might be the same Electro or a different one. And then, I don't know. If you ask me, and you haven't asked me, but you're listening to my podcast, so I'm going to tell you anyway. It has to be the same Electro. It has to be the same Doc Ock. It has to. You can't make the same mistake as you did on WandaVision. Even though I think that was on purpose, but I think they kind of jumbled the execution on WandaVision. You can't bring in an actor to play the same role that they did in a different Marvel movie that's outside of the MCU and then bring him back and play the exact same character but with a different twist in this universe and expect people not to think it's multiverse, even though you've already established that you're going to be introducing the multiverse. But the Quicksilver thing, I was largely okay with it because it's like a special thing. Because it's like, you had the same character in both of those universes, the X-Men movies and the MCU, so it's like, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. But you can't do the same thing with these other ones. Because Electro has not been established in the MCU yet. We only know him from outside the MCU, right? And then if you're going to be using the same exact actor to play that character, he has to be from that other universe. He has to be. You can't just be like, it's not fair to be like, oh no, but these are different ones and we just like the actors, but they're completely different characters. You can't do that. You can't just bring in the entire cast of these Spider-Man movies and be like, Oh no, we're starting completely fresh, guys. You can't do that. You can't bring in Doc Ock and be like, oh yeah, this Doc Ock, yeah, he's the same actor. Yeah, those Spider-Man 2 events never happened. He's just a fresh character now. No. And I'm not even saying, oh, you can't do Doc Ock in a fresh way. You can. Just don't use the literally same actor that was playing him 2 decades ago in the other Spider-Man movies. You have thousands upon thousands of actors that could play this role. Well, probably not this specific role, but thousands of actors to choose from. You're going to choose the same exact one that played the role 2 decades ago, the same character? No, it's going to be the same one. We're going to be messing with some multiverse stuff, all right? The big question is, though, if they're bringing in these characters and stuff, then, like, at some point, when are these Sony movies that they're making going to pop into the MCU? Because you can't really say, oh no, these are completely separate. I don't know, man, because the line, it seems like every single day the lines are getting more and more blurry. They're not like, okay, if you make the original Raimi trilogy canon to the MCU, right? And then you also make the Andrew Garfield movies canon to the MCU because you have those villains. You don't even need the 2 Spider-Men to appear in this Spider-Man movie. You could just have the villains, which, again, Electro covers the 2 Andrew Garfield ones, right? And then you have Doc Ock, which could cover that trilogy that Sam Raimi made. There you go. Those movies, those 5 movies are now canon. At what point are these newer movies, which are already like teasing that they could be canon? You know, you got the poster on the Morbius trailer where it's like Spider-Man is a murderer. You have Michael Keaton showing up at the end of that trailer too. Like, you're going to tell me that he's playing a completely different character? I think that's for sure going to be the same character. And that's fine if Sony wants to be like, funnily enough, my girlfriend and I are currently watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So if you watch that show, you understand what I'm talking about right now. It's like, okay, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I consider it canon. However, it's like a umbrella effect or something like that. It's like, okay, the MCU movies are like on the top level, and then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is like on a lower level. And then, I don't know, like the canonity or something, I don't know if that's a word, like only goes down. It only goes from the movies down onto Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and like the other shows. It doesn't really go up. So it could be like that with the Sony movies. It could go like, okay, you got the MCU movies and then it goes down to the Sony ones. Like, they could acknowledge the MCU stuff, but the MCU movies and shows are never going to acknowledge the Sony stuff. I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. But again, like, the lines are being blurred to where, I don't know, man, at some point, I mean, if you're bringing in these other characters, like, it's not impossible for Venom to show up. Like, Eddie Brock is just, you'd be like, hey, we're hungry, we're best friends. Hey, yo, Spidey, what's up? You want to go get a bite to eat? We're all losers, okay? You know, like, it's looking more and more likely that could happen. And if that happens, I do not support it, because that means, like, Sony will have at least, like, some control over the MCU. Even though it's like a small part of it, they still have some control. And it's them not knowing what the hell they're doing with their movies that got us in this situation in the first place. So I don't know. I hope it all works out, but all these rumors are crazy and they're getting me a little worried, if I'm being honest. Okay. Finally, Loki. Very excited. We're only a couple days out from this first episode dropping. Apparently, the reactions are that the show is insane already. You know, just these first couple episodes are going to be crazy. I'm excited. Yeah. I wonder what's going to happen. Is this going to lead to him appearing in Thor 4 somehow? Right? That's what I'm thinking. once they announced the show, that's what I thought. I thought that Loki is going to do something in the show, and then the TVA is going to send him to the original timeline somehow. He's going to appear in Thor 4, and then whatever happens in Thor 4 is going to lead into season 2 of Loki. Because I think they already confirmed the season 2. I think that's how it's going to happen. Yeah, I don't really know what to expect from the show. I hope it's, I hope we get some cameos, or at the very least, many references to other characters and stuff to make it feel like a time travel show, because that's what I want from the show. I want them to be hopping through timelines. I want them to go back in time, stuff like that. I don't want them to just like, I don't want the show to be strictly going to new places and be like, oh, this is a new timeline, and then like it's a place we've never seen before, and then whatever happens doesn't have any effect on anything that we're going to see in the future. I want like ramifications to happen. You know, that's what excites me about this show. Yeah, this show, I wonder how it's going to work. I wonder if they're going to, because they have to follow the Endgame time travel, right? Which, you know what? We're going to get into this. We're going to get into it, all right? Hold on. Give me a second. Let me talk to you for a second. I need to go on a little rant right now because over the last, 2 years since Endgame came out, I've had conversations about the time travel in Endgame, and there are so many people that think that they went back in time in the same timeline, like they jumped in one linear timeline to the past. When in that same movie, Hulk essentially looked right at the camera and told the audience, you cannot change the past at all. If they went back to the literal timeline that they were in, just to the past, that would be changing the past. Because at some point, they were not in the past. They had to make a change in order to be in the past, right? That's a change. If they can't change the past, then that can't happen. So, I'll tell you my interpretation of it, because I think it's right. And then, this is fitting because Loki might deal with this conversation in just a couple of days. Okay, so I think, again, just my interpretation, the moment they go back in time, they're now in a new timeline. At no point do they ever touch the original timeline when going in the past. So they're like, okay, let's go back and get the stones. Right when they go back in time, let's say they are in timeline A, okay? That's the timeline where all these movies take place. And then in Endgame, when they go back in time, they go to timeline B, okay? So you have 2012, 2013, 2014, when they go back to the events of previous movies. They're now in timeline B. Since we're dealing with the multiverse, right, they've already confirmed that it exists because they mentioned it in Doctor Strange, right? We're dealing with the multiverse. There are countless timelines, right? So you have countless timelines. There's a very good chance that there are some timelines that are very extremely close to one another. So let's say timeline B is extremely similar to timeline A, but it's still a different timeline, right? So when they go back in the past, air quotes, go back in the past, what they're really doing is going to a different timeline that just so happens to be at an earlier point in time than their present. Does that make sense? Okay, so they're not literally going back into their 2012, 2013, 2014. They're going into timeline B's earlier point in time, which is their present. You know what I mean? They're not actually going back in the past, right? So now they're in timeline B. Timeline B, they could do whatever they want because it's not their timeline, right? They can make whatever change they want, as in just being there, because that's a change. They're sitting there, right? Because at some point they were not there. Now they're there. That's a change. However, my interpretation, of course, I don't think that makes it branch into a different thing. I do think when they do cause like a major change, that's what branches. So it's like, okay, you got Bruce taking the stone from the Ancient One. You got Loki stealing the Tesseract. You got, War Machine knocking out Star-Lord before he gets the orb. You got, what else? You got, I don't know. What else do they change? I don't know. But you know what? You got Cap like knocking out the other Cap. You know what I mean? You got all these changes. That's where it splits off into like timeline 2A, 2C, 2D, stuff like that. Okay, that's where they branch off into even deeper timelines. But at no point do they ever touch timeline A in the past. So, therefore, it is literally impossible for Captain America to go back in time at the end of the movie and be with the same Peggy that we saw in the movies. That is not the same Peggy. When we see him with her dancing, that is timeline B, timeline D, timeline C, whatever you want to call it. That is a different timeline Peggy Carter. Which means, in timeline A, where the movies take place, she always married a different man who is not Captain America. That cannot change. Why? Again, like Hulk said multiple times, you cannot change the past. So he cannot go back in the past and marry Peggy and be the husband throughout, the main timeline, because he can't do that. If he was always the husband, he wouldn't need to go back in time and do that. Also, on the same topic, when Tony talks to his father in the past, he does that advice thing. That is not the same. That is not actually Tony's father in that timeline. He's talking a timeline, F, whatever you want to call it, a different Howard Stark. So yeah, those are different people. I want to get that straight across. And I know it ruins people's happy ending of, Peggy and Cap finally getting together and stuff. They do, but it's not actually the same Peggy. So, hate to break it to you. And I don't understand how people still don't get this, because like the same people will be like, oh yeah, this is a different Loki that we're seeing in the show, because it's a different timeline and stuff. But it's like all of the time travel stuff is in a different timeline. None of it is in the original one, because they cannot change the past. The moment they change something in the past, let's say they could go back in the same linear timeline, even though it's ridiculous to be like that, because again, they've already established that the multiverse exists. But let's say it's only one timeline, and that's where they go back in time. They make a change. Boom. You're dealing with the grandfather paradox. Oh, what's the grandfather paradox? Oh, I didn't mean to phrase it like that, but if you don't know what the grandfather paradox, it's essentially, okay, you go back in time. You kill your grandfather. If you kill your grandfather, you were never born. Therefore, you cannot go back in time to kill your grandfather. That's a paradox. You can't do that, because you would have never been born to do it. Right? Back to the Future deals with that a little bit. It's like, okay, Marty goes back in time, and then, over time he starts fading away, because, he's causing these changes to where his parents don't meet, right? And then he has to, fix it, and then his parents meet, and then, oh, look at that, now he can remember his brother's face and stuff like that, right? That's a grandfather's paradox, but it's a movie, so they only lightly deal with it. But the thing is, in Endgame, they directly talk about Back to the Future and say it's bullshit. They say it's impossible, you can't do that. But then people walk out of the movie and be like, oh, it's just like Back to the Future. They go back in the same exact timeline and change things. There always been two Caps. He's been Peggy's husband all along. It's like, no, that's literally impossible. And they rammed it into your head multiple times with multiple scenes in this movie. How do you still walk out and be like, oh yeah, Captain America really did marry the exact same Peggy Carter we've seen in the movies? That's impossible. I hope Loki sheds some light on that and explains to people in this show what the time travel rules really are. Because apparently Hulk looking at the camera and saying you cannot change the future, and then directly says Back to the Future is bullshit. Apparently that's not clear enough. Apparently because Captain America was sitting on a bench instead of coming back on the machine, people are dumbfounded and say, oh, well, that means he's always been living in the same timeline. No, that does not mean that. But I think I've ranted long enough. I thank you for listening to the podcast. This is a solo one. This is the episode 1, official episode, like I keep telling you. We've done some test runs, but this is the first official Undisputed Studios podcast. I'm excited for Loki. Okay, I'm going to be serious. We're not just going to review one episode and then disappear for a month and then come back. We're going to do every episode. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be a fun time. If you want to support, it's probably a little bit too early if I'm being honest. If you want to, I need to build a loyal fan base. But if you want to support financially, monetarily, you can. Already got a Patreon set up. I don't really have any benefits right now, so if you want to do it right now, it's out of the goodness of your heart. God bless America. It's going to be patreon.com/undisputed. I'm surprised I got that URL. It's a pretty sick URL. It's very simple. I don't know why nobody else is taking it, but I now have it. So patreon.com/undisputed. Go there to support. And yeah. Check out the podcast when we drop it in a couple of days. Loki episode 1. Very excited. Okay, thanks for listening.